Hi, I'm Max Brantley. It's Thursday, October 30th. I'm with the Arkansas Times, and I'm going to talk about news in Arkansas today. Many of you have called and written in about how I do these incredibly well scripted programs. No, of course, we can't afford a teleprompter. I put together this little sheet and scrawl some words on it, and I use those as cues to tip me off of my performance. You might notice here my first word says dirge. What that is to do is to remind me today of the first news of this morning, which I got about 4 a.m. this morning when I got up. And it was news from the University of Arkansas's Arkansas poll about their polling project, and there were a number of political questions on the poll, and the outcome from my point of view were just about uniformly bad. They showed the biggest margins we've seen yet in the races for Senate and governor. They showed generic preferences for Republican candidates in races for Congress and for the state legislature, and generally conservative leanings in just about every aspect of the polling question. It's something of an outlier. It's the worst results anybody's seen. I still think what I've said before, though it pains me to say it, is that you can't conclude after looking at all the polling that the top of the ticket Republican candidates are not leading by some small amount of margin. Again, perhaps there's some miracle turnout, the unknown voter that will get there, but I think it's going to be a difficult Tuesday for Democrats next week. Now, there is one piece of news that I think you'll find in the Arkansas Times this week that this poll really is not very representative of, and that's the notion that there's a generic preference for Republican candidates in races for state legislature. We're talking about 100 races for House, for example, and the voting differences district by district is huge, and so it's really kind of hard to average overall state outlooks and translate that into district by district outcomes. David Ramsey has a story in this week's Times that talks about a lot of the key races for House in which Democrats have hopes of taking away some Republican seats and holding on to some hotly contested existing Democratic seats, and maybe, just maybe, holding a majority of the seats in the House of Representatives. If this were to happen, it would make all the difference, even if there is a Republican sweep in the other offices. If it doesn't happen, I think we'll see a crumbling of what little Democratic Party structure remains left. So maybe a little bit of hope. I've got a story up today on the Arkansas Times blog about opposition research. This is the time of the season, the final week of the campaign, when everybody unloads every bit of dirt they've got on the other candidates. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's a stretch. The Democratic Party wants to make the point that a couple of Republican candidates have demonstrated public court records of violence against women. This is not a good thing by any stretch of the imagination, and it fits into an election year where there is a voter gap among women for Democratic candidates. This kind of thing ought to widen it. They've also got some information the Democratic Party has compiled about the poor bill-paying habits of a Republican candidate for House down in South Arkansas. And finally, the most salacious element of the day is stripping, or let's call it male dancing. Republicans in Arkansas have been trying for a good 9 months now to make an issue out of the fact that John Burkhalter, the candidate for lieutenant governor for the Democrats, maybe for a brief period of time worked as a bodybuilder or a Chippendale-style dancer, short period of time. They built all this story on a really revealing TV interview that John Burkhalter gave a Northwest Arkansas TV reporter about his young working life and how he worked his way up from literally scooping sewage out of broken sewer pipes into a multimillionaire through an engineering business and real estate development. Yeah, at some time he may have danced. Is this a terrible thing? I point out that we've got a candidate for Attorney General for the Republicans, Leslie Rutledge, whose email revealed that on her work time at the state, on a state computer, she sent around, guess what, hot photos of hot guys like Chippendales showing not much more than a smile and a little pouch covering up their most private parts. I don't care about this. I got this material and didn't write about it at the time. But the hypocrisy now of Arkansas Republicans feeding the Drudge report about this terrible man, John Burkhalter, well, the hypocrisy is deeper than you know what that John Burkhalter used to scoop out of sewer pipes. Good news out of the Pulaski County Prosecutor's Office because of complaints from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Larry Jegley says he will file a criminal charge against an official of the Little Rock Housing Authority for failing to turn over records. Actually, they said they'd turn them over if the Democrat-Gazette would pay $16,000. There is a propensity on the part of some public officials to resist public records requests until the hammer is lowered on them, perhaps by criminal prosecution. Some of them are going to continue to ignore the law. We've had the same sort of problem with Secretary of State Mark Martin. More reporting on the Arkansas blog today about the strong effort by Democrats to turn out black voters and the sometimes racially charged means that they're using to do it. My observation on this is that there are reasons why black people feel under the gun from the establishment in America and still don't feel a part of the American mainstream. I think that's sometimes hard for white people to understand, not ever having to endure the difficulty of what I call driving while black in America. Finally, maybe some good news. Bill Clinton's going to come back to Arkansas for one last campaign swing this weekend. On Sunday, he'll be in several Arkansas cities trying to lift the Democratic hopes in the last minutes before Tuesday's election. And I was interested in the news today that Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, you've heard of Apple, announced today in a column for Bloomberg, I believe it was, that he is gay and considers it a gift to him. I guess God hadn't visited his punishment yet on Mr. Cook for his sinful ways. With that good news, I will close it out for today. I'm Max Brantley.